Welcome back. We're looking forward, B'ez Hashem, to continue the Pedic Yud Igeres HaKodesh Yud Dalid, which is the 14th epistle, page Kuf Chof. On the right side, you should see 238. We're holding at the bottom of the page. We mentioned quite frequently that we need not really to take much of the present class to review what we learned, to recap in order to get the flow, because it's all lined up on the original website, all the classes for that matter of the very beginning of the Tanya, which we merited to conclude the first few segments, which we're holding presently, Geras HaKodesh, which is the fourth. All the classes from the very beginning are lined up on the left side of the screen, the left side of the site. So on the top you have the very last classes. This is the third of Yudalid as an example. So to, especially of course for newcomers, to see what Yudalid is talking about, it's just a matter of a quick click and you have the information of what we learned up till now. So this is on the original, wherever you're watching this, but this is set up on the original website, tanyaonline, oneword.com. Also has the advantage, the way the text is set up, easy to follow the class. We do mention this from time to time. So, Igeres HaKodesh, I'm going to say this briefly. We had a whole presentation in the beginning of 10. The beginning of Igeres HaKodesh 10. On the whole backdrop of Igeres HaKodesh. It's worthwhile to see because Igeres HaKodesh is distinct, even in comparison to the first three segments. We spoke about this again then and a few times. But we had a formal presentation at the very beginning of 10, so in order to understand the backdrop of Igeres HaKodesh, worthwhile to look. Well, we will continue. So, in brief though, just to understand what Alter Rebbe is conveying over here, the spirit of Yudalid is Alter Rebbe is encouraging his followers, Mechlal. In the end of the day, we're all the followers of the Alter Rebbe, to constantly provide for the Teshvei Eretz HaKodesh, the inhabitants of our holy land, and not only provide, but to constantly provide, and more so to constantly increase on our giving and our extending ourselves to the Teshvei Eretz HaKodesh. Reflecting, Rebbe makes a point of this, which is the center point of this chapter, of this Igeres, rather, of this epistle, it reflecting Hashem's passionate connection and providence on Eretz HaKodesh, on the Holy Land. That it's not just Hashem, Tamid, Eini Hashem Alikecha, like the Pasuk says, which this is a Pasuk that Alter Rebbe quotes, constantly the eyes of HaKadosh Baruch Hu are on our Eretz Yisrael. We asked the question the other day, Hashem's providence is everywhere, but we explained it then. Tamid Ein Hashem has a special focus on Eretz Yisrael. Tamid Ein Hashem, Hashem's eyes are on Eretz Yisrael. And therefore, we have to have that, our passion towards Eretz Yisrael has to be constant, Tamid. Where do we see the increase, the point to increase in our providing for the Teshvei Eretz HaKodesh? Is because in this pasuk you see, if you read it carefully, you see that Hashem also increases, meaning to say Hashem's providence is distinct from one year to the other. In other words, the providence of Hashem is aggrandized, even if we will, every single year, which is embedded in the words of the pasuk. And because Hashem has that additional passion, and basically every single year, but it's not necessarily every single year. It constantly increases. Hashem's opening, Hashem's the light coming from Hashem, projecting and connecting itself with Eretz Yisrael, only increases, passionately increases from on high to the below, from Hashem to Eretz Yisrael, which, as we learned, is in the pasuk Tamid Eini Hashem Alikecha Ba. Mereishis Hashana Ba'ada Achris Shana. Those are key words which we explained last week. a click away to understand where is this increase. When you say Tamid Hashem Alikecha, Hashem's eyes are constantly in Israel, constantly. Okay, so we have to constantly provide for the habitants of those who live in Israel, reflecting the constant providence, the constant connection of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, eyes of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, again following the words, the verbiage of the Pasuk, on Eretz Yisrael. Granted, where do we see that we have to increase? Where is Hashem's increase, which we need to follow and reflect with our increase towards the Teishvei Eretz HaKodesh? This is in the words, Mereshis Hashana V'Adachis Shana. As we explained, that apparently, very briefly again, you got to see the previous class. It should have said La'elam V'Ad because it was the very beginning of the year to the end of the year. So it's the very beginning of the year, which is really connected to the previous year without any interruption. To the very end of the year, V'Ad Achris Shana means to say there's a perfect connection to the subsequent year. So it's constant, it's perpetuous. So it should have said La'elam V'Ad. Hashem's eyes on Eretz HaKodesh are forever. It's constant. The fact that the pasuk says Mereshis Hashana V'Adachis Shana tells us that the providence, the energy which Hashem imbues, infuses, and connects with Eretz Yisrael this year is very distinct than the year before, and the following year is very distinct in this year. It's a total new air, a total new light, a total new level of connection, and therefore it ought to reflect in our connection to Eretz Yisrael, not to give the same amount, but constantly to increase. Again, reflective of the passion and the connection of HaKadosh Baruch Hu to Eretz Yisrael. Again, not only Tamid, but Mereshis Hashana V'Adachis Shana, which the message of that pasuk says it's constantly increasing. By how much increasing? The Rebbe says, "Ein kates," a new energy, which is not compared at all to the previous energy which was extended to Eretz Yisrael, which that energy which could not be compared to the previous year, and the previous year to the year before, and so on. So this is basically the message of Alter Rebbe. Again, there's the lesson, the what Alter Rebbe is gleaning, how it's supposed to reflect in our avodah and our avodas hatzedakah. As we mentioned then in the beginning, we periodically mentioned, additional to the formal presentation in 10, that the backdrop again of this epistle, similar to many, many epistles of the Alter Rebbe in Igeres HaKodesh, is the Alter Rebbe was raising funds for the famous Aliyah of Reb Mendel Haradoker and his Talmidim, his Chassidim, which were going through a very difficult time. They settled in Svas and then in Tveria. It was a very, very difficult time. As the Alter Rebbe describes in detail in other places, but basically the Alter Rebbe had a whole campaign to provide for them and elicited enormous funds for this entire group. So this is the spirit of this chapter as well. The Alter Rebbe is encouraging to give tzedakah to the residents of Eretz HaKodesh, and not only to give periodically, but to have as constant giving. In other words, not only just randomly give, but constantly giving, providing for the Anshe Eretz HaKodesh, reflective of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Tamidei Neshem Alikecha Ba. And beyond that, to constantly increase, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu's providence just increases. Increases, he explains, a total new air connects with Eretz HaKodesh every single year. And how much grander is it the previous year? It's be'ein arech, because you're talking on ein sof proportions, infinite proportions. So it's the air which is in Eretz Yisrael is infinitely greater this year than the previous year. And last year was infinitely greater than the previous year. How could you see levels in infinity? We spoke about this in the past. But you're dealing with a total new air. And that's the reason why the pasuk breaks it up. Of course it's perpetuous in context of Hashem's providing for Eretz Yisrael, understandably so. But you can't compare this year's hashpah to last year's hashpah. And therefore the pasuk says, yeah, Mereshis Hashana V'Adachis Shana. Last year there was one type of dosage. which ended in the end of the year, right before Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah comes, a new light is extended towards Eretz Yisrael. And as we mentioned, Eretz Yisrael, the epicenter of the entire world. So by extension, to the entire world, but of course via Eretz Yisrael. Tamid ein Hashem Elokecha ba in Eretz Yisrael, and through Eretz Yisrael, the comes through. There's the ripple effect, or not only ripple effect. There's the formal extension from Eretz Yisrael to the entire world, and therefore every year it's a total new light, which is being extended. Hashem extends that. The Lashon Al Torah, a total new light, a total new energy, which is infinitely greater. So sometimes people say, yeah, sometimes people argue and say, I didn't make it till now in my life, nothing's, great, stupendous happened. Who says this next year is going to be different? And I know the previous year was kind of similar to the year before, and the year before to the year before. If you look at this Pedic over here, it says Ir Chodesh Mechudash. Ir Chodesh Mechudash means a total and a light, an extension of Hakadosh Baruch Hu, which is in infinite proportions. So you can't even measure from one year to the previous year. Like you're a total different person. The world is a total different world. Because you have an infinite koyach, which is right now being infused into Elam Haza, meaning to say on that Rosh Hashanah of that year, it says specifically through Tkiyas we elicit it. It's there, prepared to come down. Through Tkiyas we elicit that ayah to come into Elam, into the world. Again, primarily in Eretz Yisrael, and via Eretz Yisrael, as extending itself to the entire world. And all the Elam is on high, all the world's on high, and ultimately Elam Haza, which is the ultimate purpose of all creation. Which we can glean from it, it's a different year, a different type of energy, and on what level again? On Ein Sof proportions. Infinite proportion. And again, that's why the Torah divides, Mereshis Hashana Vadachris Shana. So Alter Rebbe points out over here, if you saw, remember in last week's class, there's the idea of Hu v'chochmosei echad, that this comes through the Hashem, who brings the pasuk Hashem v'chochma yosed haaretz. Hashem with wisdom establishes the earth, clear-cut pasuk. But Alter Rebbe's pirush that the haaretz is, you say again. Let's not repeat what we a click away. Literally, the last class. What is the connection of the haaretz? The Rebbe says haaretz memalakolam, and then it's reflective in Eretz Hakodesh. You got to see the last class, so let's go right away into the where we're holding. Chochma is the conduit to the Ein Sof. In other words, Hashem b'chochma yosed haaretz. Where is the Hashem? Where's the infinity of Hashem? Is in Chochma, as we explained so many times, and we touched upon this last week, that the Chochma of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, even though it's part of the Spheres, but Chochma is very unique, and Alter Rebbe has it in many places in Tanya, in Chassidus, in Kabbalah. It's Kol HaSfarim Meleim B'Davar Zeh, if you will. All the Sfarim have that Chochma energy, if you will, because it's explained explicitly, but we understand that the Chochma of the Ein Sof is not about, in other words, it's beyond distinct than any other sphere of the 10 spheres, because the Chochma, even it's embedded in the term, Chochma is koyach ma. It's a koyach which understands and appreciates where it's coming from. A Chochma me ayin timotze. It's coming from an ayin meaning to say the unknown. The unknown is because you're dealing with Ein Sof, you're dealing with infinity. And that's where, again, Chochma is the highest sphere. Chochma borders the infinity, but you can be on a border and not be connected to the other side at all. And you think about the spheres, the spheres, the Ein Sof is beyond spheres. We spoke about this quite a few times, so we're going to just try to say this, not briefly, but just move on, explain this, and you can see it in so many different places. In the third chapter, as an example of Likutei Amarim, you have a whole presentation on this idea of Chokhmah. Again, the first chapter, or the first segment, which is also a click away, the Dr. explains Chokhmah. It understands and appreciates the Ein Sof, and becomes the keli, becomes the conduit through which the Ein Sof would ultimately connect with all the other spheres, because it has a sense of bittul, it has a sense of self-nullification. What do we mean by self-nullification? Just like, we can understand this, it says, the Gemara says in Seita, just to have a little broad understanding. The Gemara says in Seita that what is the greatest hindrance to Hashem connecting with a individual or society, or a collective society? What interferes with Hashem's connection, let's say with a particular Yid? Says the Gemara, when a person is egoistic, gaiva, when a person is self-centered, narcissistic, pompous, I am, Hashem says, it's you. I cannot reside when a person has gaiva, when a person has ego. Because Hashem says, really, it's or you, it's or me. If it's about you, it's not about me. We mentioned the famous Vart of the Baal Shem Tov, which says in the pasuk, "Yisasir ish b'mistarim ani lo yarenu." The simple meaning of the pasuk is that could you hide from Hashem? And Vani, Hashem says, and I won't see you. That's the simple meaning of the pasuk. Baal Shem Tov Taich is beautiful. If you put the pause after Vani, it's about I. Leirenu. I can't see you. Hashem says, I don't project, I don't connect with you, I don't see you, because it's Vani. Again, it's or you or me. But if it's Vani Loi, if you put the pause after Vani Loi, it's not about me. I'm in a state of bittul, I recognize my smallness. And to what degree? To the maximum, to the extreme degree. Like we say every single day in davening, in the Lakai Netzer, to be a keli, to teira, psachli, b'beseira secha, what does it say? Menafshi ke'ofer lakeltiya. That my soul should be like dust, which means the absolute expression of bittul, the absolute expression of self-nullification, and recognition of the higher Arkiv HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Then psachli, b'beseira secha, then I can have a psichas love, because teira secha, it's your teira. Teira is Hashem. Like the Gemara says, Teira is a neichi Hashem lekecha, no nafshi k'savis yavis. I put myself into Teira. So I want to connect the Teira with Seira Secha. It ought to be nafshi kafa lakilti, because if I'm in a state of haughtiness, and Hashem says, I cannot be in the same domain. Hashem is kind of abhorred with this. I cannot be there. When you're disgusted with something, you just stand back. Hashem says, I cannot stand haughtiness, which is also very telling. Sometimes it infiltrates in our Avodas Hashem itself. Not haughty, I am so haughty, and Hashem, don't tell me what to learn, don't tell me to learn Torah, don't tell me to do mitzvahs, and don't tell me to daven. I am on my own. That's, of course, the most extreme level of haughtiness. You have to be silly, and even every person knows, if you only have a little bit there, we understand, as we grow up, that we're really totally dependent on the blessings of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And again, every human being, nothing to do with Yiddish, every human being realize there's a hand which is leading him, and more we're honest with ourselves. It's not only periodically Hashem's intervention, or Hashem intervenes, it's constant. And the more we're honest with ourselves, that's what we say in Meidem Anachnu Loch, so we're not enough. Of course, we're always connected to Hashem's providence, to Hashgacha v'Kodesh Baruch Hu. But and therefore, when one says, "No, I don't need this and I don't need that," Torah mitzvahs, that's a silly way of expressing one's haughtiness. But of course, it's bordered with my ego. Don't tell me what to do. But we're talking about even someone who does learn Torah and does do mitzvahs and does daven and does do goes through the checklist, but in the end of the day, there's there's haughtiness, there's such strong self-recognition. Hashem says, any way you want to play this show, I'm telling you I'm not with you. You want to be connected to me, it's about you not. V'ani loy venerenu, I'm with you. It's v'ani loy yarenu. You might, a person can play a game for the entire lifetime, even as a frum yid. He's missing the bittul to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. As Hashem says, as mi abitul oni unechei ruach. When someone is poor, vulnerable in the face of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem says, abit. Not I look and I gaze on you, but abit is a very strong connection. Haboto. And I connect with you. Why? Because you realize how you're not, so then I'm there with you. You are, I'm not. That's, again, the Gemara, the spirit of the Gemara Saita, Daf Hey, famous Gemara. It's in famous Rab Nachman says, even Shminis Shebishminis. No, because you're talking about who wants to sever that flow of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And the connection with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, even a bit of self-recognition should not exist, should not be. If I want to be connected with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's when I can have the true psichas lebeseresecha. So we think about that is the midah of chachma. Chachma is the word chachma is koyach ma. It's a koyach. It's it's the first sphera, but it's ma. Ma always kind of what? What means to say I don't know. I'm always telling you I don't know, because I always recognize the grandness of the Ein Sof. And because I'm a koyach ma, therefore, as the Alter Rebbe says, the famous ha'ora in Perek Lamed Hey, kasha shamati mimeiri, as I heard from my masters, which is referring namely to the Magid, by extension the Baal Shem Tov, which is an extension again of the Baal Shem Tov, kasha shamaiti, shamaiti mimeiri, there he says it in singularly, a singular expression, mimeiri, the Magid, that the chokhmah, because of the echad ha'emes, because of its bittul, because of its complete selflessness, that's why it's the echad ha'emes, the true oneness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Ein Sof of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, connects with Chochmah because of the bittul of Chochmah, because Chochmah constantly recognizing it's not nis, if you will. There's no such a word, of course, but it's not nis. That's why it is a keli to the Ein Sof of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And therefore, really, Hashem's, the Ein Sof's connection to all the spheres is via Chochmah. Chochmah becomes the interface through which Hashem's flow of energy, entry rather, into the 10 spheres, and connect with all the 10 spheres because of Chochmah, because of the bittul of Chochmah, the selflessness of Chochmah, the nullification, the constant nullification, or that's the makeup. It's not only constant, that's the makeup of Chochmah. Koyach ma, it says the Yud, for example, is the Yud Kei Vav Kei, right? The Yud would be Chochmah, the Hey would be Bina, the Hey is about expansion. The Yud is small, but Yud is the greatest letter in the Aleph base. It's small because its smallness, and understands how small it is in the face of the Ein Sof, and that's why the Ein Sof connects to the Yud. El oni unechei ruach el ze abit. And therefore Chochmah becomes that, as we just mentioned, the conduit through which Hashem, eventually the flow of HaKadosh Baruch Hu comes into the 10 spheres and eventually into Malchus, Malchus Chamachus Kol Olamim, as he says over here, Memale Kol Almin. Ukinegdo Eretz HaKodesh, which through the Eretz HaKodesh throughout the entire world. And this is the way the Alter Rebbe teaches Hashem b'chokhmah yosedaret. Because it's a chokhmah, therefore Hashem b'chokhmah. Hashem referring to the Ein Sof. Sometimes you have Hashem Yud Kei Vav Kei associated with this 10 sphere, the 10 spheres. But the Yud Kei Vav Kei, the Alter Rebbe explains Shaykh B'Emunah, is the transcendent dimension of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Many times the Alter Rebbe calls up to Malchus also an expression of Ein Sof, but of course it's in comparison to Malchus. The spheres are called Ein Sof. In comparison to the 10 spheres, there's the Shem Havaya. There's different levels of Shem Havaya, as we mentioned so many times in Kabbalah, which is again alluded to in the Torah itself. Hashem Hashem Kil Racham. What's Hashem Hashem Kil Racham? Because there's different levels of Shem Hashem. But generally, the common denominator, Hashem, is the transcendent dimension of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, known as Seivev Kol Almin. The Ein Sof, the unadulterated purity of the Ein Sof, lies in the word of Hashem. What is the Keli for Hashem? B'Chochma. Because Chochma is total bittul. It's the only sphera which is totally bottled to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The image of it, the whole persona of Chochma, it's not periodically, it demonstrates a certain self-expression of selflessness. The whole persona, the whole makeup of Chochma is Kayach Ma. I am not. What is? The Rebbe touches it like a lightning. Kayach Barak Mavrik. And he explains it also. What's the connection to Chochma? The way that when you it's the first entry into appreciating and understanding a concept. When you're looking into something, you can't make sense. You don't realize what is the words. You're trying to understand the configuration of the words, and all of a sudden, a lightning comes in, meaning to say, it's seeming like a lightning, means say just an insight comes in. Oh, I got it. Just the words shine, and it makes sense. But just like a lightning, someone turns to you and says, "What did you just say about this great light in the skies?" Oh, it came and went. If you saw it, you saw it. You didn't, it's gone. And so too, the initial insight, we explained this, we should take the time because it's again in that very third chapter of L'Kutei Amorim, a click away. You see something, you see, oh, you got it, and someone sitting side by side you and trying to figure out maybe the same material. So what did you get? What did you hold it? Now I got to process it. You can't give it over because it's abstract. It's like, what? I got it, but I am. This is Chochma's Sphira, but it's Nekuda. It's a Nekuda Ktana. It's like a Barak Mavri. For that matter, the main shine, the sharpness, so to say, of the message comes precisely in Chochma. As we know, it's like a flashlight. It's a flash. Oh, I got it. But someone will ask me, what did you get? Could you explain me? Hold it. Now I have to take it from Chochma into Bina. To expand on it. For that matter, through expansion, that sharpness of and brightness of the information somewhat becomes a little bit compromised, if you will. Because the real deal is in Chochma, that flash. But it's abstract, because it's what? It's beyond expansion. And that's what the virtue of Chochma is. It's a nekuda. It's about bittul. Again, there's a few things, you can see the different ideas, the way it is, literally Chochma is one of the cognitive faculties. So how do you see the Chochma in the context of perception, understanding? That's the way it is, the way we grasp something. If we come in with Bina, it usually does, first of all, it doesn't happen that way. It's first the initial flash, and then we extend. If flash is a nekuda, it's like what? This initiation comes in a way of not only maximum brevity, but it's something which is kind of seeming like a flash. And if you think about a flash, you have in one hand you have the entire brightness in that flash, which catches your eye and catches your attention more than when the light is on constantly. You're trying to fix a flashlight, all of a sudden, oh, you got it, and it goes out. So it's excitement. And that's the way it exists, of course, in the initial Barak HaMavrik, that flash, that lightning, that brightness. But it comes and goes, and you have to take it from there and develop it, which is the Koyach Bina, and eventually Das, and so on. But the sharpness, the acuity, the sharpness exists precisely in Chochma. Because it's a Nekuda Ktana, so it connects to, in the terminologies of Chkira and Kabbalah, to the maskil. There's the seichel and maskil. You want to be a conduit to something grand, it's about the bittul, it's about the nekuda. And that's why Chochma, the koyach ma, is that perfect conduit to the Ein Sof, to the infinity of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Chochma me'ayin timotzi. So again, we can appreciate this lamed. Hey, it's a famous Haggadah, Ve'al Tereh B'kasher Shamayti Mimayri, as we will try to see it over here and to read it. It's a Tanya ha'ara. He says that the Ein Sof Baruch Hu does not connect even with this lofty world of Atzilus. And we explained so many times that the Atzilus, again, explained Atzilus as a paradox. is because Atzilus is beyond explanation. Atzilus is a absolutely holy world, like Gur Chara, even in comparison to all the other holy worlds, Bria, Tzira, Asiya, which is, again, Bria is enormously a holy world, that is, the Gan Eden Elyon is in Bria, Tzira would be Gan Eden Tachtin, especially as we have the Alter Rebbe, famous Shir Hashirim, explains, just gives us a little tune into what the revelation of Elam HaBria is all about, Gan Eden HaElyon. But nonetheless, this is a different idea. Atzilus is a total different idea. It's not only the first of four, but it's a total different idea, like it's well explained in myriads of places in Kabbalah Chassidus. So even Atzilus, this high lofty world, Lo Yugur Chara, the Elokus does not come, it does not unite with Atzilus, only again quoting from that famous Ha'ara, Lamed Hey, you can see it, Elokuti Amorim, click away, Lamed Hey, the 35th chapter in Elokuti Amorim, in the Haggah, LED Slapshusei Tchil B'chinas Chochma, that it doesn't even connect with this lofty, holy, sanctified world of Atzilus. Only, it does not connect with Atzilus, only via Chochma, the Chochma of Atzilus, because Ein Tzad Baruch Hu Echad Emes, because the infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that's the ultimate truth of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shehu levad Yehu ve'Ein Zlos. There's nothing else other than HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and the Madrig is Chochma. That's the level of Chochma. Because Chochma is Kechma. It's always tuned into what's higher. The whole makeup of Chochma, I'm tuned into something higher. Therefore I say Ma. And therefore the Ein Sof is B'Chochma. Hashem B'Chochma. And through Chochma, all the other spheres, and eventually over here, like we say, comes the Mamala Kalaman, and through Mamala Kalaman, Eretz Elyena, which is the Eretz Hashem B'Chochma, Yosad Eretz. Eretz would be Eretz Yisrael. So this Chochma becomes again the conduit to the Ein Sof, and we say Hashem B'Chochma Yosad Eretz, and we say Tamidei Hashem L'Kecha Ba Merish Shoshana V'Adach Rishona. And the reason why he says from the beginning there to the end of the year is because he says it's a total new light which Hashem extends of himself every single year on the day of Rosh Hashanah. And that comes through the sphere of Chochma, like we just explained, which is the perfect Keli, because of its smallness, its Nikuda, it's not Nis. Again, it becomes the Keli to the Ein Sof. And in the way that this is the way that the Alter Rebbe and so beautifully explains Hashem B'Chochma Yosad Oretz, that the Oretz Elyena, which is Memala Kalamin, reflective in the Oretz, the counterpart here, the Oretz Atachdena, which is Eretz Yisrael. It comes again a total new energy from the Hashem via the Chochma. Again, Hashem B'Chochma Yosad Oretz. Now we can understand the pasuk. This explains why the pasuk says Mereishis Hashana Ba'adach Rishona, because every single year there's a new energy from this Hashem, from this Ein Sof, via the Sfiras HaChochma into Eretz Yisrael. And therefore, because you cannot compare, and not standing at another dosage, as we mentioned so many times, it's a different type of dosage, again, on Ein Sof proportions. So how could you compare the energy of HaKadosh Baruch Hu this year to the way it was the year before, or the year before to the year before, because you're talking about Ein Sof proportions, and the Ein Sof comes in, this Ein Sof, despite its infinite, it's able to enter into the system, not regularly. If it would begin, let's say, with Bina as an example of expansion, even again, holy expansion, it's not a Keli to the Ein Sof. As it's explained many times in Kabbalah and elaborately in Teres Chassidus. Because any type of extension, again, I brought the Gemara before to see it on the extreme side, on the unclean, so to say, Gaiva is a terrible thing. It's the only, it's the main idea which interferes in that flow in the between the on high, this symmetry between on high and below is just self-recognition, selflessness, selfishness. Even self-recognition is already an issue. So when you talk about it, even in the framework of Kedusha, Bina, the Hey, it's Ispashtus, that cannot be a Keli to the Ein Sof. It's precisely the bittul of chokhmah which becomes the keli, the container, the inviter, if you will, to the Ein Sof of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Hashem is b'chokhmah. And by extension, Yosadoretz, a total new extension, every single year. Mereshis Hashanah v'Tachlis Shana. So let's see a little insight over here in the text. Hashem and His Chachma are one, based on like what we just said. Because Chachma, again, is constantly connected to the Ein Sof because of its maximum bittul. Bittul means self-nullification. And the whole makeup of Chachma is a koyach, it's a nekuda. The whole makeup of Chachma is about bittul, its smallness, and therefore it makes it the perfect keli to the Ein Sof. Again, explaining the pasuk in its generic form, and by extension, understanding why hu v'chochmasei echad b'tachas hayichud, the ultimate one is v'nikra b'shem Ein Sof, and it's called the infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ein Sof in kitz l'mayla gdula l'mayla. There's no end, and there's no there's no end. Rather, there's no border to the greatness of the light, of the light and energy and imshach mani yisbarach, which comes from Him, blessed be He. Umechachmasi, from Hashem's chachma, which hu v'chachmasi echad. Be'ili acharili adin ketz v'tachlis l'rei mamaylis. There is no end. Level after level, and expressing the highest levels, the most exalted levels. There is no end. L'mayla mayla, to no end. That's the point of Ein Sof. Uvechol shana v'shana, and every single year, yoyredu meir mechachmei lo eir chodesh mechudesh, and every single year, a total new light from this supreme chachma of Atzilus, which is a keli to the Ein Sof. That says that you're talking about Ein Sof proportions over here in this light and energy, which is extended from HaKadosh Baruch Hu on a yearly and annual basis. And because hu v'chochmasi echad, so it comes via mechachmei love, from the supreme chachma of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, a eir chodesh mechudesh, a total new light and a renewed light. Now, it is spoken about, of course, this seems to be a little bit paradoxical also, this expression. We're not going to go into it now, but it's spoken about, this, when you say er chodesh, means a total new light. Mechudesh means it's renewed. It's like a new suit, or the suit which the cleaners did an enormous a job that looks new, renewed. Is there a common denominator between the two? Yeah, you're presentable when you put on this suit, and you're presentable when you put on the other suit, and it does something to you, right? Clothes in general have a koyach to, like the famous Rabbi Yechanan, have a korimani mechabdusei, a beautiful suit, and you look, and there's a certain elegance in both of them, but you still can't compare something totally new than something which was clean, and even clean to the extent that it looks new, but it's not new. So what does it mean? A new light and a renewed light. So a lot have spoken about this, but generally the common, the idea what Dr. Rebbe is trying to convey, the energy over here, that it's something totally new. There's those who want to say that they don't want to dafka divide chodesh and mechudosh. Mechudosh is so to say, the action of the chodesh, that it's new. Mechudosh means to say it's renewed, means to say that it's the activity of HaKadosh Baruch Hu kaviyachol, which is renewing that light, or extending this chodesh, this brand new light. But what do we see over here? That it's such a light, meir which was never shown. It never came down. It never expressed itself. It was never manifest in the supreme audits, which is Malchus of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Memali Kolama, like we learned last week and on the previous page. Never ever was there such a light, such a dosage of Ein Sof, of energy of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, like this year. And you could have said the same thing of last year, and the year before, and the year before, from the very beginning of creation. But that tells you that every year, it's not just another dosage, It's a total new light, a total new extension of the Ein Sof Baruch Hu, the Hashem, the infinite, the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, again via Chochmah, which would come down to Yosed Aretz. What happens to the previous Eir? If it's a total new Eir, what happens to the previous light? So it says the previous light leaves and the new light comes in. Every single year, the Lashon of the Alter Rebbe, the light of the previous year, Mistalek L'Sharshi, ascends to its source. Every Erev Rosh Hashanah, right? The pasuk says, Meireshis Hashanah B'ad Achar Hashanah. This all transpires at the Rosh Hashanah time. So the Erev Rosh Hashanah, right before Rosh Hashanah, Shachodesh Miskasabay, when the moon becomes completely covered, reflective. Again, Rosh Hashanah is the only formal Yontif in Torah, which is the very beginning of the month. Usually it's the 15th. Shavuos, in the end of the day, is extension of Pesach, where the moon is in its full glory, in its full shine. Rosh Hashanah, B'Kesel Chagenu. And again, this is also spoken about in so many places in Kabbalah, and again elaborated in Chassidus. That's why Rosh Hashanah is a very sensitive, delicate time, because the previous light is removed and you have to introduce a new light. And of course, it depends on the overall relationship of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Am Yisrael. And the previous light is gone. It's a precarious time. That's why Rosh Hashanah, Yid stands, so to say, in this chachma manner, and the total bittul to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's a time that it's not like a regular yontiv of celebration. It's a time that Yidden are generally very understand and appreciate the moment, and appreciate what these 2 days are all about. And the Avodah of Tkiyah Shefer, you have to draw this new light, and that it should be a stabilized year. In other words, the light should come in and manifest itself throughout the entire 10 Sfiras, and eventually in the Eretz Aliyena, and then the Eretz Atachtena, in Eretz Yisrael, and via Eretz Yisrael throughout the entire world. And we have to, our Avodah, in the end of the day, it allows this to happen. That's the point of Tkiyah Shefer. The whole idea of Tkiyah Shefer is, again, another expression of self-submission, selflessness, constant self-nullification. I don't even talk to Hashem. Of course, there's Rosh Hashanah, and there's the idea of Tefillah Rosh Hashanah as well. But what is the main Avodah of Rosh Hashanah is, of course, the shofar. The shofar, it's not even my talking, and I take a horn and I blow, and I don't even scream to Hashem. It's not even about me. It's my inner me, which cannot be defined by me. It's coming through the blow of the shofar, which is again an expression, as explained. That this is the ultimate expression of bittul, self-nullification to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because we mevatel ourselves to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is the Avodah of Rosh Hashanah. Bittul draws energy. Hashem says, okay, because of your bittul, I'm coming. I'm going to extend myself. On what level then can you extend myself? I'm going to transmit, so to say, this new dosage of Ein Sof through Chochmah Yosad Aretz, because you stand Rosh Hashanah with your total bittul to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is the Meba Shefer. That's the main mitzvah of Rosh Hashanah. Again, the idea of completely not about me at all. It's the inner calling, which I won't even define by a talk or a scream to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's about the shofar, my inner voice, my inner heart, which is, again, not about me. It's the core of myself, which is beyond definition. That is what's connecting with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That it was calling to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, eliciting this energy that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has, in order, again, this Ein Eir Chodesh Mechudesh to come in and to flow through the entire Seder Ishtalshlus, through Atzilus to Malchus, Malchus Chamalchus, Kol Ulamim, ultimately into this world, collectively and individually. I should have a good year. We understand again what is this all connected to Rosh Hashanah. And again, it manifests in details. The person should have a good year in everything, health, in children, in parnasa, and in abundance, because it's an Er Chodesh Mechudesh and ain't sub proportions. And even this, which we formally, it's a mitzvah of shofar, is the Tkiyah Shefer, but also our constant composure on Rosh Hashanah is about a bittul to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Therefore, we say Tilim without interruption, which Tilim is again reflecting David HaMelech's Olav HaShalom, which was an Eved Hashem, David Avdi. We saw constantly by David, despite he was the greatest king and his Limidat Torah, the famous Gemara, which David HaMelech every night sat and learned Torah throughout the entire night. Vani Telas V'Laish, as the Gemara says, he was the greatest scholars in Torah of history. The Gemara, again, it's a Gemara, the way David HaMelech learned Torah, even as a king and a greatest martyr and everything. But we want to describe David, it's his bittul to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's his vulnerability. It's his humility. David Avdi, I am not. Vani Tilaz V'Loish. I mean, the whole entire Tehillim is all about David's bittul, David's vulnerability in the face of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's why, famous Gemara, Ani Noi Levorich. Who is going to take the Kosher Bracha? In the Sud of Leviathan says the Gemara, in the end it's going to be David HaMelech. David HaMelech, not Moshe, not Avraham, not Yitzchak, not Yaakov, not the greatest tzaddikim. David from everybody? Yes, David from everybody, because everybody, Moshe Rabbeinu, the Torah says, Onav mikol adam ashal pnei adam. But who, if you want to describe this idea of a constant, overt bittul to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, a lifetime of bittul to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the whole Tillim, again, David HaMelech's name work, which was Ne'im Zmiris Yisrael, is David HaMelech. And therefore he becomes the keli to the perfect keli to the connection of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Bani Lai, there was the Arenu throughout David HaMelech's entire lifetime. David Melech Yisrael, Chai V'Kayam. We don't say this expression over nobody. Why? Because Dafka Bittul is the keli to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So back to this Avodah Rosh Hashanah, we sit and say Tillim throughout the Avodah Rosh Hashanah. Our davening is with additional self-submission, because our bittul, our selflessness is expressed in the day of Rosh Hashanah, our self-nullification, submission, absolute submission to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that allows the energy to flow. And every single year, and especially we see how it's a precarious, or it's a sensitive time. Because the Eid of the previous year, Mistalik L'Sharshe, Shachodesh Miskasabay, reflective on this very Yont of Rosh Hashanah, when the moon is not in its full glory, not in its minimal glory as well. It is completely covered, which is again reflective of the previous Eir leaving. There is no shine. Through the blowing of the shofar batfilas and the prayers. Did I include the prayers as we just said? It was just explained. A total new light from the a total new light, the supreme light, from a higher place than the previous year, which is again in the level of Chachmei Lah. Chachmei Lah is always the keli, the conduit to the infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So the Chachma reflective of the Ein Sof, and it's a new level of Chachma, because it's a new level of the Ein Sof of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Lahori La'aretz, Elyein V'Ladarim Aleh, to shine to the supreme Aretz, which is again the counterpart of Eretz Yisrael here, Lamata. As the Alter Rebbe explained last week, there's Memalakol, ultimately Malchus, and to the inhabitants on Aleha, on that Aretz, and Kolos Elim Saliyim Batachtenim, Amekabam Chais Mimeno, to all the worlds, the supreme worlds and the lower worlds, which we see the light from it, from Chochma, like it says, from the infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and his Chochma Melubish Bo, which is invested in Chochma. And that manifests throughout the entire the Elim Saliyim and Tachtenim, and all the way down to this very physical world. And when we say the very physical world, reflective of the entire world, that the world is a healthier world this year, because it has this hamshach, this manifestation of the infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in a total different proportion, and it's broken apart. That's why Rosh Hashanah, we wish each other, and the whole point when we daven to Hashem, yes, and we connect the end of Rosh Hashanah and the whole idea of going to Kibbutz Tzadikim and asking specifically that the bracha should be manifest in Bon Nechai, in every detail, in healthy children, in health for the entire family, in Parnasa, and all in abundance is the famous expression of a Kulam Revicha, because it's Ein Sof, so it doesn't stop. If it's limited, so it's not infinite, and if it's infinite, it's not limited, so it manifests in every single detail of the person's life. It's not a now you're focusing on yourself. No, it's because the Ein Sof is Ein Sof. So what stops it? Nothing. That's the point of infinity. So it's manifest in every area, not only on a spiritual plane, and not only, of course, Elam Esalyenim, the supreme spiritual worlds, but also in this very physical world. In which area in the very physical world? In the overall important areas? What's important? What's not important? Everything is important. The collective is important. The individual is important. Of course, it's important not because to the person, individual, it's important. It's important because from the Torah perspective, Hashem wants there should be health and healthy children and stable and stability and parnasa as and again v'kulam revicha, abundance in all. That's in the end of the day the Ratzon of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So there's a new dosage of Ein Sof, so it's manifest in every single area in a person's life, in all his needs, and again in abundance. Shall Hashem help that this year's Hamshacha into Olam should be manifest again. We should see that full extension to the full extent of the Ein Sof, the infinite light, the infinite blessing, Eretz Yisrael primarily Eretz Yisrael, as it needs so much bracha at all times, particularly the present time. And through Eretz Yisrael, the entire world, and entire world means the entire world. There should be brachas ad bli dai, a healthier world, a sublimated world, a world recognized, like you say, Vayashem Melech al kol ha'aretz. The entire world should sense the malchus of HaKadosh Baruch Hu with a positive energy manifesting in every single detail. Al kol ha'aretz, even matters which are in individual, the artziest, the bona chayim mezein revicha, v'kulam revicha, an abundance of brachas in all areas, individual and collective. And of course, we should have that by Hashem Melech HaKol Ha'aretz, by Mo'yiyah, the Hashem Echad, associated with the ultimate redemption. Have a wonderful night.